All right. Well, we are just 1 minute away from our first of our webinar series for 2021. So we'll give everyone just another minute or two to log in, check in on our Facebook page. Either way, you can jump in and get all the information you need. So we'll give it just another minute and then we'll get started. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Diana Kelly and I am the President and CEO of Camp Cal Now RV Park and Campground Alliance. We really appreciate you jumping onto our webinar today. Please stick around towards the end. We do have a little poll that will help us learn more about whether or not this webinar was helpful to you and how to bring more information to you that could be helpful. And we will be having weekly webinars here. We're just getting them kicked off, but we're going to be having weekly webinars on everything from fire insurance to software to unique accommodations, even park maintenance. So stay tuned for more information on that to come. Today I am joined by Casey Cochran of Campspot. Casey is the Director of Business Development and has personally spoken with more than 800 parks. So he really does have a unique understanding of what's important to you, the owners and operators. And Casey's passion really lies in helping the park owners understand where revenue and occupancy can actually be increased with technology. Casey's goal is really to provide the best customer support in the industry, and this really keeps him engaged in the day-to-day activity of onboarding, ads, demos, setup, training, and ongoing customer support, which is just really unique in the industry. You don't find your upper level management, being the boots on the ground people, and that is really what you find here with Campspot. Today, we're going to be focusing on the importance of showcasing your park to the online guests, and we'll be looking at ways to drive additional revenue to your park. Please feel free to go ahead and ask questions in either the chat or the Q&A, and we will do a little Q&A at the end. If something comes up in the middle, I'll be sure to shoot it over to Casey. And from here, Casey, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I appreciate everyone being here, spending some time with us. Hopefully I can shed some good information to everyone from kind of what we've seen, especially over the past couple of years, and some good trends that we've seen that I think will be helpful to all parks. Again, whether you use Campspot or another system, there's definitely some information that's helpful to have. And again, at the end of the day, you want higher occupancy and you want to make more money, right? And so what are the best ways, and how can we use technology to assist in some of those things? So right off the bat, if you guys are seeing the screen here that we're sharing, the first thing that we feel strong about, like the initial approach of someone looking at your property. So typically someone's going to go to your website and they're going to get a lot of the information that they're going to want to get as far as about your park. And when they are ready to actually make that reservation or start to see what's available, we find it extremely important that you maintain that high level of energy when someone's converting to say, okay, now I want to see what's available. We feel strong that going to some kind of long, boring form right off the bat kind of takes away from that excitement, kind of takes away from that, okay, I'm excited about this park. Now I want to see what's available. And then if you're immediately, met with a long, drawn out form, a lot of times what we find is that just encourages people to call, encourages people to say, well, if I have to fill all this information out, I might as well just call them and see what's available. But that goes directly against, what you're most likely wanting, which is you want someone to be able to book regardless of whether you're answering your phone or not, and you want that revenue to be coming in either way. So the first way we kind of focus on is keeping things simple. When you're looking to go camping, who's coming with you? But we use what's called like a hero image here. So again, just displaying your park. We've had numerous seminars around this, but one thing that Campspot does for parks that come on, that if they don't have good photography for their park, is we'll send someone out and we'll do a free photo shoot. But regardless of Campspot, having good photography of your park and showcasing it, it's what people want, right? It's what people want to have a better understanding. So the first thing and the customer's expectation is, give me an idea of what highlights this park. Why should I go there, right? What's some of the things that are drawing me in? Do you have to take an image of every single site in every corner of the park? No. But are there things that highlight or that you're excited about the park that you want everyone seeing at some point if they happen to stumble across or look at your park? And that's what we want to focus on, right? We want to focus on what's going to draw them in. In this case, this park, has a big water display, water park type thing. So this is what they're using to kind of lure that guest in to say, okay, let me see what's available here. The next phase of this is showcasing different events and things of that sort. If you guys have stuff going on at your parks that you want people to be aware of, keep it simple and make it available for them to be able to showcase exactly what's going on and when. And then if you guys want to showcase different like package discounts or things of that sort that you want to entice someone to stay for the 7th night or something like that, again, having a place to be able to showcase those easily or change those very easily. But the first step when we go, we want to search and see what's available here, again, based on a search range, right? So if I'm searching for what's available during this time frame, we want to showcase everything that the park has available, right? So we want to say, we find it very important that when a guest is searching for inventory, to inform them of everything you have available at that time. And the reason being is that even though I may be coming in here for an RV site, like myself personally, I don't have an RV, right? But I have lots of friends that do. And so when they go and I go camping with them, typically I'm looking for lodging or I'm looking for a tent site because I don't have an RV. And so the idea of just everyone that comes across your booking platform understanding what you have available is important, because then they start talking to friends, right? They start talking to groups, or they start talking to other people and say, hey, I know you don't have an RV, but they have a cabin here. You should check this place out. And so we find that just displaying everything off the bat gives everyone a broader range of everything you have to offer. And then from there, we really want to get specific, right? We want to let them get to exactly what they're looking for as quickly as possible. So if they are looking for specifically an RV site, they can get there. Or if they don't want to look at something that's $300 and they only want to search by price, you want to give them the ability to do that. But as you can notice here, regardless of what we click on, whether it's RV sites, whether it's cabins, whether it's lodging, is that we're showcasing these with photography, right? And so the idea is that there might be multiple of this deluxe cabin. You might have 6 of these, right? But we want to showcase, what do these things look like, right? What's the layout of them? What do they sleep? How many do they sleep? What's maybe the floor plan and things of that sort. And a lot of times you get this from reading, but we fundamentally know people don't like to read. They like to look at images. They like to look at prices, and they want to see, is it available? Can I book it right now? And so we want to get people to that as quickly as possible. So we can say, well, we're looking for an RV site. So Campspot fundamentally feels, and again, a lot of systems in general, I would say tend to agree. But one of the age-old issues with campgrounds, specifically in the RV space, is I don't want to showcase a map of my park because I don't want people choosing a specific location. Because if I'm staying in a spot, let's say that this has a 3-night opening right here, so they can hover over this and get an idea of what this site costs per night and what the trip total is. But let's say that this has a 3-night opening and this has a 5-night opening, but I choose this site. Ideally, as a park owner, your goal is to stack your grid, right? Your goal is to maximize the amount of people that can fit in your park. So if you allow people to choose their location, you're fundamentally going against ultimately what your goal is to do, and that's to stack your grid. It's to fit as many people into the park as possible. But what we do know is 95% of people, when surveyed as far as from the camping space, said that location is one of the most important things of their camping experience, that getting to know or having an opportunity to choose where they stay on the park is a very relevant piece to the overall, enjoyment of that camping experience. So for instance, at its very basic level, if I'm with my kids and I'm going camping, I'm going to want to be over here. And so for me, that's going to make a big difference on my camping experience. Whereas if I don't have my kids, guess what? I don't want to be anywhere near this. I want to be as far away from this as possible. And I probably want to be somewhere over here where I'm looking at the water or whatever the case is, however the park layout is, but that becomes very relevant. And so with Campspot specifically, again, as far as adding to the user experience, we know people want to choose their location. So let's say this person wants to be as close to the bathrooms as possible, right? So maybe they select this spot. we find it important that, again, you do not have to take an image of every single site, but taking multiple images of the different site types that you have, just to give people a good overview of what it is that site type kind of entails. Like, for instance, this has 57 of these specific site types, but we're going to give them a good overview of what one of those site types looks like in some capacity. And again, you want to highlight what the best of those site types looks like, right? So again, you give them an overview, but people don't like to read this stuff. They're looking at images. They're like, ooh, I want that spot. And okay, but now we got to make sure that rig's going to fit there. So if this person has a 45 footer and it doesn't fit there, your software at this point should tell them that very easily. It should say, okay, that rig size is not going to fit there. So again, all that information's here. If they just simply wanted to read through the information and get all this, they could totally get that. But we find a lot of times people don't read, so we need to regulate that ourselves. Whereas if this person has a 43 footer, and it tells them, hey, for a 432, but if there isn't a for that selected size, it's just going to simply tell them that. So where they can just come here and say, okay, my rig isn't going to fit here, but maybe it's going to fit here. So if they put this information in, I have a 23 footer, I have slide outs on both sides, it's going to showcase everything that is available. And that's ultimately what you want. You want them to be able to choose their location, but we got to make sure that that rig's going to fit there. So when we talk about driving revenue, a big hot topic lately in the industry is, well, should I charge for a lock site fee? So this is something Campspot introduced in 2015. It's had wild success overall. And I think overall in the industry, regardless of what software you're using, this is starting to catch up and somewhat adding this. So to kind of break this down again, at its fundamental level, it's saying, okay, if you want to be guaranteed this spot and fundamentally take my ability to move from this 3-night opening here to maybe here to keep this 5-night opening available, if you're going to remove that ability from me, then that should come at a cost, because again, that potentially costs you as a park owner or manager, costs you revenue, right? Because you would want that 3-night person to stay here instead of the 5-night opening here, where you're potentially creating a 1-night gap. So the idea with a lock site fee is, like, you're always going to be guaranteed the specific site type and the amenities, right? You never move someone from a 50 amp site to a 30 amp site, or you never move someone from, a waterfront site to, a shaded area, or whatever the case is, right? However you guys have your parks laid out. But there is significant value in the ability of someone getting the option of guaranteeing their site, because it is that important. So to put this in perspective, 56% of every reservation made online through Campspot last year, this past booking season, 56% of them chose to pay to lock their site. So it's a very relevant feature that consumers are like, again, going back to my example, for me to spend $15, $10, $5, $20 for me to be by the pool for the entire week or for the entire weekend with my kids is an absolute no-brainer, right? Or for me to spend $10 to be away from maybe the chaos of the kids, to be over here or something like that. Again, to me, that's worthwhile. Is it for everybody? No, but they have that option, right? So part of this goes hand in hand with your ability to stack your grid, right? So traditionally in the campground space, people have kind of just played Tetris with a grid, right? There's a 2-night gap here. There's a 2-night gap here. I'm looking for a 4-night stay. Okay, well, what do I need to do with this grid in order to accommodate a 4-night stay? And so traditionally campgrounds, again, they kind of go into this manual Tetris mode and they start saying, okay, if I can shuffle this person here, move this person here, maybe I can make room for this person so they don't have to move halfway through their stay. And while that's good, right? And some people become very good at this, it kind of fundamentally goes against potentially what the overall goal is which you want your inventory that's available to be available online. And unfortunately, if you're doing this manually, it's not available online because it's not going to expect this person to move halfway through their stay. So one of the things that Campspot's created is an algorithm that automatically optimizes your grid for you. And again, this is specific to just Campspot, but overall, your goal, regardless of what software you're using, it's to stack your grid, right? It's to fit as many people into your park as possible. So that's where we feel the balance of saying, okay, I want to maximize revenue to accommodate the fundamental need that people have that say, I want to choose my location. But if they don't lock their site, then having a software or having the ability to stack that grid with those sites that did not lock, that didn't pay that lock site fee, we feel you can get the best of both worlds. We feel you can drive revenue from this lock site fee. And on the flip side of that, if they don't lock their site, you can drive revenue by adding additional occupancy by this essentially making additional room. Now, can you turn these things off? Of course, right? None of them are, required by any means. But again, when you talk about driving additional revenue, you want to fit as many people in your park as possible, but you can also drive revenue by basically allowing someone to be guaranteed a specific location. So regardless of whether they lock that or not, the next thing that we feel very strongly about is what else can you sell people? So we know right now there's a huge boom in camping, right? There's a huge uptick in the amount of people that want to go camping. And so what can you do to sell? What can you do to maximize that ticket, right? So they're about to spend, what is it, or $409 they're getting ready to spend for their week stay here, right? Well, what else can we add to that experience? And so if you haven't traditionally added add-ons at your park, maybe there's limited things. Well, we don't want golf carts there. We don't have water by ours, so I don't have kayaks. Well, what about things like hammocks? What about things like linens for your cabins? What about, we've seen, portable hot tubs. We've seen, like you can do train rides and bike rides. There's all these different things that, again, that you start to see, advanced fire pits. There's all different things that you can add on here. And again, when you start talking about ancillary income, you start talking about simple things like a kayak or a canoe or a hammock, or, a pavilion or, certain things, it really starts to make a difference in the amount of per reservation volume that you can get. And so the nice thing with a lot of these add-ons is, again, you want to display them and you want to showcase them, but you want to have the ability to manipulate the prices on these, right? So it might be a different price point for the middle of the week for this golf cart than you want it for the weekend. And that's important, right? Because it's worth more on the weekend, just like your site types are. And you may want to have certain rules on there. You may not want to allow someone to book something for 2 nights. And you want to have a rule that says, hey, there's a 2-night minimum over the requested period of time for this specific add-on. But I can't speak, I guess, strongly enough about it. If you are not offering something in addition to the site itself, figure something out. As simple or as inexpensive as you can make it, figure out something to upsell. Because again, remember, a lot of the people camping now, this is a new experience for them, right? And it being a new experience, they're looking for everything possible, right? So they're looking for anything that can add to the experience. Because again, keep in mind, if you go to Disneyland, think of how much money, or Disney World, either one, if you go to either one of those, think how much money you're spending once you get there, right? The ticket price is one thing, but it's all the, whether it's the stuffed animals, whether it's, the giant turkey legs, a $15 lemonade, whatever the case is, people are used to on their vacations to spending money in addition to whatever it costs to stay there. Now, traditionally in the camping space, it's always kind of been, well, these people, they're bringing everything that they need, and that might be the case for a lot of like the people that have monthlies and seasonal stays. But for a lot of people, even if they're staying a month, this might be their first month in a campground. This might be their first 30 days that they're spending somewhere. And so knowing other things that are available, they are selling. They're selling very fast. They're selling at the highest rates we've ever seen, and it's making parks a significant amount of additional revenue. So whether they want to add this or not, again, we want to bring them right back to this in case there's something else that they maybe want to book. But other than that, really gets pretty straightforward here as far as just checking out, having that be a seamless process. We can't speak enough about having an integrated payment solution into your booking platform. Anytime someone gets transferred out from like their booking engine to a third-party payment, it just causes red flags. It causes people to call. And so we feel strong about having that all integrated into one platform. So it just all flows. So instead of having to do anything else, you simply put in this information and then that autofills, and then you can continue to the payment information without, ever leaving the site or whatnot. But that's kind of like the online booking experience. And again, one thing that's important to note is that you might want to have different add-ons for different site types, right? So if you guys have a couple cabins at your park, and maybe, I want to grab this cabin, maybe I don't need to lock it, but you might want to have different add-ons that are available for your cabin. So what we've seen a lot, let me see if this park has, so this park has linens that they rent out for specifically for their cabins, but they wouldn't have linens for an RV site, right? So again, simple things like that. What can you do to add to the experience? How can you showcase it beautifully on your site, on your booking engine? And how can you drive people to not only book online, but also book things in addition to that, that ultimately just add to your bottom line, that add to that revenue. We feel a lock site fee, add-ons, a grid optimization algorithm, those three components on the consumer facing side do wonders in the sense of A, creating the most available space, driving the most revenue possible, and then adding to that revenue with anything else that you want to add in addition at your park. So that's kind of the consumer facing side of kind of the, I guess, the highlights of the booking aspect of things that we feel makes a ton of sense to make sure that you're utilizing or capitalizing on at this day and age, with the amount of parks and with the amount of people that are looking to camp, right? So I've jumped over to the back end here, and I kind of want to highlight a couple of things here just to kind of show on the back end of things the importance, I think, of holding, really of maintaining that same level of I guess ease of booking. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So one of the main things that we've always focused on in the back end is how simple is it to make a reservation, right? There's so many parks still that are coming from pen and paper or coming from an older dated system because they're like, well, this is just easy. It works. I don't want to have this long 3-month training period on how to, adopt a new system. It should be simple. Well, we would agree with you. It should be simple to take a reservation. It shouldn't be difficult. You should be able to do something the first time without really any training, because you could take a reservation over the phone right now with no training, right? You would say, okay, when are you looking to go? Who's coming with you? Okay, I'm looking to see what's available. This is how much it costs. So one thing that we feel strong about is automating that system. So if someone calls and says, hey, I'm looking to go camping, I don't know, maybe we'll say the 10th through the 14th. It's myself and my wife. Maybe we're looking for an RV site. Maybe we're looking for a specific site type, but I just want to search and see everything that's available in that time frame. Now, during that time frame, you could, of course, start putting in the specifics of what you're looking for. So everyone knows that the conversations kind of go a little bit different. Like someone calls and says, I'm looking to come, for this time frame, I got to pull through, I got a 23-footer, or it's Mr. Johnson that calls, so we just need to add him, and then his profile will pull up. But ideally, we want to be able to showcase, and I'll touch on this later, but parks pricing, for the most part, for up until maybe the last couple of years, has been pretty it's been pretty consistent, meaning that their pricing doesn't change that often. And with the influx of demand, with the influx of amount of people that are looking to go camping right now, your pricing, even if it's not the first year, but you should start looking ahead to your pricing should start to change. It should start to change and evolve based on the demand of the different times of the season. And so one thing we want to do very easily is display what things cost without having to dive into anything. You can look at things through a list view. I want to look at my red carpet sites, and I want to see exactly what's available, how much it costs, and the trip total. So there's no memorizing rate cards. You shouldn't have to, have like, well, what do we charge on the holiday weekends versus midweek stays, and what's our 7-day rate based on or compared to a 30-day rate? All that should be automated. All that should be simplified for you or your staff. And so the idea is that your staff should be able to come in, and within 10 minutes, they should be able to take a reservation on your platform or for your park. But more importantly, they should be able to take a reservation and really not be able to screw anything up, right? I mean, that's really the most important thing is, not having the ability to make a mistake. And so whether they want to book through a map view, maybe they want to choose a place that's by, the water park. So they come in, they want to look at this site. Maybe they want to come in, they want to look at, this site that's by the bathrooms, whatever the scenario is. We want to give your staff the same kind of booking experience. And again, this goes cross platforms, right? Your staff should have as easy of a time explaining and describing what each site type and what your park offers as they would if they're booking online. And you should simplify that for them, right? You should, whatever you want your staff to be able to say about these site types, write it, right? Create it and give that customer that is calling over the phone that same somewhat level of experience, that they know exactly what these sites accommodate. They know exactly what the max and minimum length is. They know exactly what an overview of that is. They can look at the different images to kind of get an idea of what those site types are like. So now when they go in and they say, yeah, I want this place by the bathrooms, I got a 23-footer with slats on both sides. If this rig doesn't fit here, the software doesn't allow them to make that mistake and put it in there. Otherwise, ideally, they've looked at this information. They know exactly what would fit in there. They've explained that to the guest, and they can book this way as well. The number one reason that we found people do not sell add-ons is because they don't get them offered to them. And typically they don't get offered to them for pretty valid reasons, right? One, you're on the phone, there's 10 people looking to check in, it's busy, the phone's ringing, someone's on hold already. And they're like, okay, just when they arrive, I'll go ahead and tell them whatever add-ons are available then, we'll just explain it. We'll just let them know then, right? That's usually the first thing that happens. Like, I don't know what I have in my inventory. It's crazy busy here. I'm not going to go and walk them through all these different things right now. It's too time consuming. Well, for one, if you're taking 60 to 80% of your reservations online, it will free up a significant amount of time on the phone. And that's the numbers that we're seeing. And that's the numbers where it really should trend. The hotel space is out over 80% of bookings made online. There's no reason that the camping space shouldn't be right behind that. And so we're seeing massive increases going from, 10 to 15% of their bookings online to 50, 60, 70, 80% of their bookings. In some cases, 100% of their bookings, because they don't allow, reservations over the phone. They only take them online. Some parks are adapting that just because they don't want to be a slave to the phone system, and everything that should be available is available online. So just go ahead and book it that way. But either way, just your staff knowing what add-ons are available, how many they are, what they cost, what pricing model you set up for them is a huge step in the right direction to at least them very easily being able to tell the guests what is available, right? Whether they book it now or they add it now, at least offering it to them, saying, hey, we only have this many carts available. If you'd like to, if you think you'd want to have one, I would suggest booking that now, because there's only a few left. And even if there's only available for part of the reservation, these are all available for the entire reservation, but maybe you have a golf cart, but it's only available for 3 of the 5 days. Well, you'd still want to be able to rent that out. So that's important that your system can tell your staff what things are available only part of the time as well. Either way, whether they add something there or not, whether they go to their car, whatever the scenario is, again, just showcasing your park to your staff to be able to explain and basically give that same level of service that maybe you as the owner would give, or maybe are still giving, but to just automate that to some extent for whoever is on the phone. When you say automate it, it's basically giving them all the speaking points. You're giving them the automated pricing. You're giving them the images that they would need to be able to kind of, elegantly explain, the site type that someone's looking at. It just adds to the experience. And again, at the end of the day, it drives revenue because it gets people that much more likely to book. Now, the next thing from here is, what are some other ways to actually truly drive revenue, right? When we talk about, on the front end of things, displaying the park, beautifully, having good site type descriptions, having unique names for your site types, doing add-ons, stacking your grid, maybe you're implementing lock site fees. Well, what is the easiest way for you guys to start adding additional revenue outside of those things? So the first thing that I would point to is, if you don't have a camp store, doesn't mean that you still can't sell things, right? Doesn't mean that in your front desk office or whatnot, if you have a camp store, great. You can have multiple, you can have 10 different locations, or you're selling things. You can have 5 items, you could have 5,000 items. And this, our point of sale is included with Campspot, but most systems have some sort of point of sale. But the idea with this is that if you're not selling other things, even not just add-ons, not just like kayaks or golf carts or stuff like that, but other items, you probably should be, because they sell, right? There's a reason why people are able to create an entire point at like a camp store around these things, because it's convenience, right? People want to be able to buy certain things. And so ask some of the places what they're selling. We get that question asked all the time. Hey, what are the top things that are selling in camp stores? And we're happy to provide that information to people that are using the system, in the sense of saying, well, these are the things that are selling at a high rate. Maybe think about adding simple things like this. And a lot of them are very, obvious, and some of them maybe not so much. But the idea is that this is an easy way for you, while people are at your park, of course, to add more revenue, to sell more things, right? So having a point of sale, in the sense to be able to maximize that, whether you have a place where you're just trying to sell, some chicken fingers and pizza on weekends because you have a food truck or something come in, or you have a full camp store with 10,000 items. Either way, have a software that can accommodate that. But if you're not doing that, I would encourage you to add simple things like this. Now, when we start talking about rate management, actually, I'll get into reporting in just a second, but when we start talking about rate management, a lot of parks either completely embrace this, right? They either say, okay, I'm on board. If I could charge more, I would, but how difficult is it going to be? Or you have the other mindset that's like, nope, I'm not looking to price gouge my guests. I want to be fair. and I don't want the pricing changing? What if so-and-so books on site 32 and then someone else books on site 33 and they get to talking and one realizes that they paid $42 a night and another one realizes they paid $55 a night? What would that conversation look like? So the first thing that I would say to that is, when did you book, right? If someone booked 6 months in advance, another person booked the weekend before, in every other space, tickets, rental cars, hotels, airlines, events, anything in general, they go based on occupancy, right? They go based on demand. And everyone should keep in mind that your parks are in higher demand than any other industry right now. It is the industry to be in right now. You have the premium inventory of what so many millions of people want. So is it fair to you as a business owner to not charge what it's worth? And so again, we would always argue to say you don't have to use dynamic rates at all, but you already kind of, for the most part, most people are using dynamic rates already. And I say that because you probably charge something different for holiday rates than you do for weekday rates. You probably charge weekend versus weekday. You probably charge prime season versus off season. You probably charge, you probably already have some sort of structured or tiered rate structure, right? Well, why did you get to that point? Well, you got to that point because you realized there's more people that want to come on the weekend than they do during the weekday. And there's more people that want to come during the holidays than they do maybe during a non-holiday. So what am I going to do? I'm going to adjust my pricing. Well, all you're doing is you're taking that exact mindset and you can start to apply it to any and every day of the week, of the month, or of the year. And really being able to do that easily is what we find important. That's where we think technology can come in, is saying, well, how easy is it for me to manipulate my rates very simply? So just to give a simple example, let's say this is 4th of July weekend. You're calling this, dynamic 4th of July rule. And you want to, over the entire month of July on your premium waterfront sites and maybe a couple of your cabins, right? So maybe it's just certain site types that you wanted to add. And then maybe you want to tie in your golf carts or something like that to that. But the idea is this: when your occupancy on those specific site types on that specific date range gets to 50%, you want your prices to go up, 10%. Click save, and then it's done. So then you've just implemented a dynamic rate structure that you do not have to monitor. You do not have to, observe. You don't have to do anything other than set that rule. Then you can monitor it. And then again, what we always encourage is you adding to it, right? So then you say, okay, well, now when we get to 70%, maybe I want to add another 10%, or I want to add $10. I want to go from $52 to $64. And again, remember, we're just on these specific date ranges, on these specific site types. And maybe you only wanted to apply for advanced reservations, right? So maybe you just want to say, okay, it's March right now. Our busiest month is July. So for all advanced reservations, maybe I want to put in a rule that says I'm going to have a reservation minimum, right, of 7 days. So I'm only going to take reservations that are 6 months in advance for 7 days. That's going to be the minimum. So I'm going to see as many of my holiday weeks that I have available. I want to try to fill those in advance with week-long stays, or maybe 4-night stays or 3-night stays, however you want to do that. And again, these are very, very intentional things that you can do with technology as far as implementing rules to say, okay, on these site types, on this date range, I want to have a 4-night minimum for reservations that are 6 months in advance, because I want to fill my entire weekend. I don't want someone 6 months in advance to book a Saturday, Sunday, when by the end of the year, when it gets closer to that date range, that there's enough people looking to stay for a week or for 5 days or for 4 days. So use rules to your advantage especially for advanced reservations. I mean, advanced reservations right now, from our data so far, are up more than 3 times. 3 times the amount of advanced reservations have been made. A 300% increase, I guess I should say, right? So, I mean, it's a massive, massive amount of people that are booking in advance right now. Well, do you want a 1-night or a 2-night Saturday reservation over the 4th of July, even though it's a reservation, even though it's, 6-7 months in advance? You might not want that reservation quite yet. You might take it, a little bit closer to the date range if you have a 2-night opening there, but you may want to fill your advanced reservations with week-long stays to start, right? Or maybe just certain site types, right? The site types that everybody wants that always fill out. Well, you should maximize what you're getting for them. And you should also maximize the amount of time that someone's willing to stay there. And so I always try to put this in perspective for people that are hesitant on dynamic pricing in some capacity. How many people last year during your prime season did you turn away? How many people called and you said you were full? Because if you did that even once, you have to ask yourself, how much would that person been willing to spend to stay there if I had space? And that's ultimately what you want to figure out, right? The goal overall from like a technology provider for software is to help you guys understand, okay, what is the most amount of money that I can charge on any given site, on any given site type, on any given night based on the supply and demand at that current time. And that's where, again, using technology, using the rules that you've set up, using some structure on the back end to help facilitate that. So you're not having to constantly monitor and constantly, manipulate those rules. But again, the more you monitor it, the better, right? So if you see that you're at 50% occupancy and it triggers that rule and your pricing goes up 10%, and then you continue to see that trend of going up to 60 and 70% occupancy, well, that's a good trigger to go ahead and put in another maybe increase. Whereas if your occupancy starts to slow down after a triggered increase, maybe it doesn't need to go up anymore, right? But again, how easy is it for you guys to set these things up? We feel, again, the way that we've set up the rules and the systems with the account manager and support that you get, it should be very simple. And it's not something that, requires a full-time job for you to sit there and monitor. You set it up and you see the different rates. Now, again, what I will say is once you do start using dynamic rates, it does become addictive in a sense, in a good way, because you start seeing, okay, I went from $62 a night to $74 a night, and my occupancy is up more than it was last year. I have more advanced bookings. So the idea with that is you take that dynamic rate, and does that help you make your decision for the following year? We say, okay, we didn't show any decrease in occupancy when we went from $62 to $73. Let's just start our pricing at $73. And then now let's track occupancy from there. And so that's where we're starting to see just these massive increases, again, during the right times. Now, I didn't touch on this, but this is important. Everyone always talks about dynamic pricing and it raising your prices, which is that's the good thing, right? Of course, that's what you want to speak on, is raising your prices. But we say this all the time. You have finite inventory, right? If you do not sell a Wednesday night during your off season, let's say for $65 a night, if you don't sell that Wednesday night, it's gone forever. You can never sell that inventory ever again, right? It's not like a Snickers where, if you don't sell it Wednesday, well, maybe I'll sell it Thursday. That site night is forever gone. You can never get it back. There's nothing you could ever do to ever recoup that inventory, right? So the idea is using dynamic rates doesn't have to mean increasing your pricing. You can use this on saying our non-peak season during these site types that aren't maybe as, as desirable for whatever reason. Maybe you say, okay, well, until I'm at 50% occupancy, maybe I want my prices to go down 25%. And so I want to have, I'm willing to lower my prices in general without a coupon code, without a promo code, but I want to trigger it, right? I don't want to allow everyone to book out at this rate. Maybe I only want 20% of people to book out at that rate. Maybe I want to offer something just to get some people during those non-peak season. But then what this does is this helps you very quickly realize and figure out, okay, what price point do I need to go down to for it to start encouraging occupancy, for it to start to encourage people to actually book it. But I don't want to just indefinitely change it there. I want to trigger it. I only want it to be for a certain period of time, or I only want it for a certain percentage of occupancy. And you maybe want to control on the types of clients that you're getting, right? So maybe if you go down to a certain price point, it's bringing in campers that you don't want there, right? But it's better to know that, or to understand, okay, even that type of camper is worthwhile occupancy during this period of time, but it'd never be, worthwhile maybe during this period of times. And those are good things to start to understand. So instead of having to go onto your website, change all the pricing, lower everything down, or start spending money on marketing to send out discounts, basically paying to give people a discount, which is crazy, offer a discount, put a trigger on it, put a hold on it to where it's not going to book out your entire park in advance at a lower rate. So you can put these different triggers on it to stop it, but then you can at least see, okay, what is the price point that's going to get people here during my non-peak time or in my my less desirable sites. And again, that's very relevant, right? Because $35 instead of $52 for a lot of people during off season is probably still worth it. In some cases, maybe not, but in a lot of cases it is, because again, you're never going to get that inventory back. So everyone always talks like dynamic pricing only going up, but honestly, like if you're using it properly, you should be using it both ways, again, to increase occupancy, because at the end of the day, that's king, right? The more people in your park, that's the more money you're going to make. And that's ultimately what you want. But when there's a high demand and there's more than one person that wants that specific site, again, you have to treat your park like inventory, desirable inventory. And to some extent, that the pricing should go along with the demand. And if 100 people want to stay there and you only have 3 open spots, it's not that they need to go to a bidding system, but you should have some sort of trigger on there to say, hey, it's going to cost more. There's 100 people that want these 2 sites. It's going to cost more than it would if you would have booked 8 months in advance. Now, again, I can't speak enough about that, what dynamic pricing does for advanced bookings, because the one person out of the 50 that'll come to you and complain about this and say, oh, my rates went from 43 to 52. What's going on? You say, well, when did you book? Well, I just booked, a couple of weeks ago. Okay. Well, if you book in advance, the pricing is 42, but as our occupancy grows and as demand grows, the pricing reflects with it. And so what does that do? That tells that person, oh, okay, I can still get that rate. I just need to do it in advance. So what does that do for you? It just increases your advance reservations tenfold. And so people are booking further in advance, and parks are getting a lot more strict with their cancellation policies. Again, I can't stress this enough, that your pricing and your cancellation policy, these are valuable for someone that cancels within 2 weeks. Whether they're looking at the weather change, you can't help the weather. And so if that's the case, in California, obviously knows about this more than anyone in the country, obviously. So, your cancellation policies should reflect that inability for you to control weather, of course, right? But also what you can do with your policies, and I'll see if I can jump over just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, is that maybe in your different policies and things of that sort, you might want to just maybe you do want to provide a full refund, but maybe you want to provide a full refund of just camp credit, right? Maybe that goes to just your park and they can only use it there. And then you're willing to offer a full refund. But if they want a refund and they want that to go back on their card, it makes sense to potentially have a different refund policy for people that want just a full refund. Because again, if they're canceling at certain different time frames of the year, maybe if they cancel 6 months in advance, maybe you don't want to do anything, or maybe it's just a $10 cancellation fee. But if they cancel within 2 weeks, again, right now, you can almost use that to your advantage, because right now there's a good chance that you're going to be able to book that again. But that doesn't negate the fact that you might not. So the fact that you might not book that again is not your fault. That's the guest's fault, right, for canceling. And again, there's reasons for canceling, especially with COVID and things of that sort, and whatever policy you want to provide. But I would encourage parks to use camp credit as much as possible, because the guests have been very, very, I guess you could say, like, adaptive to that. They haven't said if they get the option of getting $50 back or $100 back, and $100 back goes to the camp credit, they can understand that. They can justify saying, okay, they're giving me 100% of my money back, maybe minus a small fee or maybe not, but I do need to use it there for the next time we go camping there. And so again, when you talk about revenue overall, obviously refunds don't help anybody, but if those refunds could be made internally, that makes a big difference in that revenue coming back to you, obviously, at some point. We're at 45 minutes here. I got, of course, a whole bunch of other things I could talk about, but I definitely want to leave it open for questions and things of that sort. So I will maybe turn it back over to Diana, maybe. And then if we have some questions, great. If we don't have any, I'm more than happy to, continue rambling on.
I don't see any questions at the moment. If you do have a question, feel free you can put it in chat or the Q&A. And I can get to, I'll read those off to Casey. We'll give you another second here. If there's anybody that has any questions, please feel free. Otherwise, we'll let Casey go on for a few more minutes before wrapping up our first of our webinar series.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing that we've seen a lot, recently, as far as, especially with the adaptive things with COVID and things of that sort. So a lot of the things that I've touched on here have been pretty relevant to, to driving revenue. But one of the biggest things of driving revenue is also automating processes and eliminating touch points that ultimately aren't necessary. So two of the big ones that we adopted this past year that made a massive difference for parks overall was when someone books online, some people charge in full and some people only want to charge a portion, right? They want to charge a first night deposit or 50%. And you have full control of doing that, in Campspot or whatnot. You can choose whatever route you want to go. But ideally, the two biggest pain points in camping overall for the guest, and really, I think I guess a park owner would probably maybe disagree. There's probably some other bigger pain points, but overall, it's when you show up, you're waiting in line to get to your spot, or to get, to be able to go to your spot. And then you have to go in and do a financial exchange and then read over terms and conditions, sign them, and turn that in. So really, we want to eliminate those two pain points. So first thing is you can automate that, right? So either A, having someone book online and pay in full will obviously take care of the payment aspect of things. Or even if you do want to charge, say 50% down, we can automatically send them the remainder of their balance prior to arrival, like let's say 24 hours prior to arrival. And so when they get that, they can go ahead and click that link and go ahead and finalize that payment. And so again, having everyone paid in full at a minimum should be happening at this point. There's no reason that you should be exchanging money when someone arrives. Now, again, if you're focused on, we want to accept as much cash as possible, totally get that. We want to accept as many debit cards as possible, and you can encourage that. I completely understand it, but overall, the most valuable resource in a lot of cases is a lot of times your time. And so, maybe you're going to save 1% or something like that on a credit card fee, or 2% or something along those lines, which I know absolutely can add up. But overall, your time is valuable. And so what could you be doing to maybe maximize that other 2%? Well, maybe it is these add-ons. Maybe it is, walking that guest to their spot. Maybe it is giving a rundown on the park, because now you have time to do things like that. And that adds to the guest experience. That gets them coming back. And that overall is going to be worth a lot more than maybe the 2% you save because, you got them to pay in cash instead. So the payment thing is a no-brainer. The next thing is your terms and conditions. This is in every park, or at a minimum it should be, right? And so it's laying out your refund policy, your cancellation policy, your terms and conditions for the park, the rules, things of that sort. So one of the big pain points is coming in and having this waiver that you have to read over. And a lot of times they're long, and they should be, right? There should be a lot of things covered in them. But ideally, you have all those things taken care of ahead of time. So what we do is we send that, once that payment's made in full, we send them your terms and conditions automatically. They can electronically sign that. It goes into the reservation. So like if it's been accepted or not. So let me just go to like a couple reservations here or something, kind of show you if it's been accepted or not. So if you go into a reservation and maybe this is a group reservation, but you're going to know if they've accepted a terms and condition or not, right? That gets loaded into here. And so that signature gets put in automatically. So ideally, if every person that comes in is either A, paid in full, and then B, have they accepted your terms and conditions, right? And so it'll tell you here if those terms and conditions have been signed. And so what we've suggested, because you can't necessarily force a guest to sign anything right ahead of time, but what you can do is you can regulate it by saying, everything needs to be paid in full prior to arrival, and you must accept our terms and conditions. Otherwise, you're subject to cancellation, or you're subject to cancellation without refund. Now, again, what does that mean? That means that you're telling that person that they need to read your terms and conditions prior to arriving. If they're going to have to read your terms and conditions anyways when they get there, and they're going to have to sign it either way, it's in your best interest to just go ahead and have them do it ahead of time and be stern about it, right? Be strict about it, saying, look, you need to be paid in full prior to arrival. You don't have to pay everything up front. Maybe it's just 24 hours before is the remaining balance, but we do need your these terms and conditions signed prior to arrival. So eliminating those two things, as far as taking payment at the time of checkout or check-in, and then having those terms and conditions signed and that waiver automatically added to that reservation detail, is saving parks a significant amount of time on that check-in process. So you start pairing up like, okay, imagine 60 to 80% of your reservations are taken online, right? So it eliminates that call volume. And then every person that comes in is paid in full. So it eliminates that portion. And then every person that comes in has already signed your terms and conditions. Now that's wishful thinking to some extent, but it's being executed at, hundreds of parks within our platform, getting close to thousands of parks that are, that are all using this. I mean, it's a very few small percentage that aren't now, that are on Campspot. But ideally, whatever system it is, having those two pain points eliminated should and will save a significant amount of time, kind of moving forward. So, yeah, any questions come up there, Diana, or are we still looking good there? Looks like we're still looking good. So yeah, I'll pause there. I think that gives a pretty good overview of, I guess, of just some of the things that we think we like to highlight in, whether it's taking reservations, group reservations, whether it's getting as much of the admin things done on the front end as possible. But I can turn it back over to Diana if there's anything else. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and if there's anything that comes up, I'm happy to answer offline or answer on the forum or after the fact. Happy